Well, as I say, when I was up here in San Francisco, we had no mixing facilities up here. We had no editing facilities up here. So I had to create, Zoetrope basically was an editing mixing facility. When it got sort of kiboshed in the what we call the Black Tuesday massacre of all our scripts and THX and everything, and we were thrown to the winds. I realized I was going to have to start my own, buy my own editing equipment, and eventually build my own little mixing studio so that I could make my movies. The idea up here was that we didn't build sound stages. We went and shot anywhere in the world. We wanted to shoot the movie, and then we'd come back here and finish them. So we'd write them here and finish them here, but we'd actually make them somewhere else in the world. So I needed a facility to do that, which is really where Skywalker Ranch came from. Originally, it was a little house in San Anselmo, and then after Star Wars, we outgrew that, and I built this place. The thing about visual effects is when I did Star Wars, I had an idea of doing this crazy 1930s serial action-adventure film, and the idea was it would be very, very fast-paced and very exciting. The problem was there really were no special effects facilities at that time. Doug Trumbull had the closest thing to a special effects facility, but he was trying to be a director and direct features, and he'd retired from the special effects business at that point. So I went to a few of the people that had worked for him that were doing sort of industrial films for the planetariums, or people that were doing Pillsbury Doughboy commercials and that sort of thing, and then a lot of college kids, because they're just, apart from an occasional map painter at Disney or doing Bond films, there really wasn't any industry. None of the studios had special effects departments anymore. They'd all been abandoned. So I was sort of forced to start my own company in order to make the movie. And that's really how ILM got started in the first place. And I knew that I wanted something that was going to sort of, I had to push the limits of the technology of the film medium in order to make this movie work. Because I couldn't have just spaceships slowly moving through the frame. I wanted to be able to pan with them, move with them. To get that vocabulary added to my lexicon, I needed to invent some new technology, which is what we did at ILM. We were able to create motion control cameras that locked the foregrounds and the backgrounds together, so I could have much more freedom of movement. In that case, I was able to then have shorter shots and have a much more kinetic visual style to the film. And since I was making 3 of these, I kept ILM going through all 3 films, and eventually we took on outside projects to pay for the people that worked there in between the times I was making my movies, and it turned eventually into a big company.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 603 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young. Welcome to a special episode of the show. Another missive from DragonCon. We have Matthew Wood, Henry Gilroy, and Fon Davis, each respectively from Skywalker Sound, Lucasfilm Animation, and Industrial Light and Magic, talking about the legacy of companies that George Lucas has created over the last 50 years. This was recorded at DragonCon. Unfortunately, the audio is not as good as last week's audio with the authors of Star Wars. We weren't able to plug into the board, but Mike has done everything he can with the audio to make it as listenable as possible. So it might be a little rough, but definitely worth listening to. So without further ado, here we are. I'm going to be your moderator today. My name is Bryan Young. I've been writing about Star Wars for almost 20 years now. I've done stuff for StarWars.com and Star Wars Insider, and these days I write all about Star Wars and on Star Wars stuff. And I host the Full of Sith podcast, and have for like almost 15 years now. To my left is Henry Gilroy, who's written many Star Wars comics and your favorite episodes of Clone Wars and other animated series.
Hello. Thank you for coming out.
And then to his left is Fon Davis, who is a special effects extraordinaire and has worked at ILM and has his own studio now. And to his left, Matthew Wood, the voice of General Grievous and Skywalker Sound extraordinaire. And all the battle droids.
Roger, roger.
So as we're talking about the legacy of Industrial Light and Magic, and I think more generally sort of the companies that George Lucas created to build, not even company, I don't think George Lucas ever sat down and said, you know what, I need companies. He basically put together what he had to tell the stories he wanted to, and across those companies, whether that's Skywalker Sound, whether that's Lucasfilm Animation, whether that's Industrial Light and Magic, there was a common culture across those. And I'm wondering if each of you could speak to what that was. What binds all of those companies together? What's that ethic that is in common, that George Lucas sort of imbued across those 50 years of those companies that maybe still lasts, that he sort of put there?
I think, well, there's a lot of things. George Lucas is very complex. He's a very driven man. I think he'll go down in history in cinema, not just for Star Wars, but also as an innovator. Because when you think about everything that he's done, you know, you look at nonlinear editing with the Avid, you look at Skywalker Sound and surround sound, you look at performance capture that he kind of really mastered big crowds and Attack of the Clones. Every time he was doing something, he was always pushing the envelope of technology and what we're capable of doing in motion pictures at every level. And he didn't maintain ownership of any of it. He kind of just gave it away, you know. So they created Pixar with Lucasfilm. He just kind of sold that off. And, you know, I think that's going to be a huge part of his legacy. Because it was always, I say, the culture part of it was nothing is impossible. You know, so he would always challenge us with things in the stories that he would create, or other filmmakers would come to ILM and they would ask for the impossible. It was never like, oh, that's impossible. It would be like, okay, well, how do we do it? Instead of, you can't do that. You know, so that was very much part of the culture. It felt more like a university that was experimenting with things than it really did a workplace. In fact, we even called it a campus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think service to the story too is always big across all the divisions of the company. We're trying to serve a story. We're trying to serve a director's vision for a project, and it can be done, you know, visually with the writing, with the sound, and it was there to support Star Wars at the beginning, and then there was such a great group of artists that had been assembled that we're like, let's use us on other projects. So people like Spielberg and Marvel and various companies would come in and use us in the interim between Star Wars and now, you know, fully fledged companies across the world, which he was incepted out of Star Wars. So that it's always been that, yeah, service to the story and also the people. There's a very unique group of artists that have come sort of outside the Hollywood system, and George Lucas used a lot of his fortune from Star Wars to create things like Skywalker Ranch and the Letterman Digital Arts Complex, and very beautiful places to work that were not necessary, but they definitely assist in the creative process of making films in whatever division you're doing that with. So, yeah.
And the thing that tied us all together was lunches with each other.
Yeah.
You go to the different divisions and have lunch.
Yeah,
I did.
exactly, yeah.
George used to have this quote. I started at Lucasfilm Animation, which is 2005, and that's quote unquote the young part of the company, because it started way later. But it's been 20 years now. But you know, his philosophy, you know, whenever we would pitch him stuff, he'd say two things. First, dare to be great, which is he was very generous when it came to creativity. He really wanted you to try new stuff and do new stuff. And then the other thing was dare to be goofy, which is don't take it too seriously. Have a good time while you're creating. And I think, as Matt Fon was saying, you've got these assembled artists who are bringing their strengths together to create something amazing. You know, I can't listen to like sound effects like Raiders or even Star Wars and go like, oh yeah, like that, those sounds like are only specific to like Skywalker Sound. And I know you guys probably know the same thing. Same thing with the effects. Like the effects that he created besides the nonlinear editing and the CG. Yeah, Gollum wouldn't exist if Jar Jar hadn't existed. So, is that good? Is that funny? I don't know.
I mean, you all laugh, but I mean, it really was just them trying to figure out how to get that done on time, because I think so much of that culture was, okay, we need to get it done, and here's the deadline, and the movie comes out when the movie comes out, right?
Yeah, when you go to the archives and you see this amazing matte painting of Hoth, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic, and then you realize it's painted on a glass shower door. That's really kind of like the low-tech, high-tech, but also just thinking forward and using what materials you have to better tell the story, as you're saying.
To that end, I mean, let me ask some of those secrets behind some of those things. You know, like what was the most shocking thing in your behind-the-scenes work, whether it's with sound or story or whatever, where it is something where you're like, oh, that's just a shower door or whatever. Just because you need to get the shot done.
I have lots. But the one that always surprised me the most is when you did high-speed photography, pyrotechnic shoots, because in the movie you would see these massive 4-stage explosions with fireballs flying out of windows and all this stuff and debris. And when you go to see those shoots, it was just a white flash and everything would be gone.
I mean, sound, you know, from the perspective of Skywalker Sound is this thing that you don't see with your eyes. So it's a very emotional kind of thing. It's subliminal in a way. So and your brain has this ability, they call it actually, some academics have named it the McGurk effect, which basically when you take a sound and you put it in synchronization with an action on picture, your brain wants those things to be connected, and they want that connection to be made between those. And the simplest and funniest sounds we use for things, and Ben Burt, who was my mentor, who's an amazing artist, who actually just had his 50th anniversary of being at Lucasfilm. He started in '75 acquiring sounds for the first Star Wars film, and he just went out and recorded all these interesting sounds to bring in to make Star Wars, and it was pretty much the early inception of sound design. But some of his funny things that we would do, like during the prequel movies, we shot those movies in Australia, so I was spending a lot of time there. And I'd go to funny places like, I went to a penguin sanctuary in the for Antarctic penguins. It was in Melbourne, and I recorded all these penguin mating calls. And then I went, in the north part of Queensland of Australia, I went to this bat sanctuary, flying fox sanctuary, and there was a couple of them that were fighting over a banana that I recorded. And then we ended up taking those two sounds and making the sounds of the Geonosians that are in the arena battle. So it's just funny things like that. You know, you put those things together. You never think you're going to use mating calls of penguins and group bats fighting over bananas to make them alien. But it was you acquire these things and you bring them in. And in Skywalker, we have a massive library that's been acquired over the last 50 years. But we definitely have a very special set of sounds that are only used in Star Wars. We want TIE fighters to only be in Star Wars, all those things to harken back. Because it is, he used to call it 50% of your experience in the theater is that emotional connection. And even, I remember the scene that really worked for me in Force Awakens, we were doing that. This is the scene when Finn and Rey are running away from the First Order on Jakku. And he's like, wait. And then you hear the sound of the TIE fighter coming. And if we didn't hold on to those sounds as precious, you know, there could have been anything. So that fact that, you know, a TIE fighter recorded probably in 1975 is still resonant as a scary thing in 2015 to make the movie. I was like, yes, it worked. These things are special and we retain them and they're only for Star Wars and it works as an emotional through point for your script. Yeah.
I still have like this, does it take a special sort of person, like when you're hiring people or bringing new people in, to be able to think outside the box, or to be able to fit in with that crew that works in these places where, I think of Ben Burt sitting around going, this electric shaver belongs in this metal bowl, and that's going to be like Trade Federation tanks.
Yeah. I mean, I say, like, so I hire folks now, like I'm sort of the head of the Star Wars Sound division, and a lot of the tech can be taught in the job, but I definitely look for people that are can work in a team. You want team members that feel like what we're doing, it's bigger than all of us. We're serving a story bigger than all of us, whether it's Star Wars or another genre. But certainly with Star Wars, I get a real good pick of people that want to come in and work for us because it's been their dream, just like it was mine 35 years ago. So we definitely get the cream of the crop of people to pick from, and you want people that can work in a team and serve a higher purpose with the story. Yeah.
I feel like we also look for people who are not easily discouraged in their work, because you just got to keep driving through even when it gets difficult. You're going to make mistakes, and things are not going to always land the way you hope they land, so you have to be able to pull through that with a good attitude and just keep powering ahead, because failure is not an option. It's something we say very often.
Yeah, we learned on Clone Wars pretty early on, if we really loved his design, we might not show George. Or we show him later, because like the challenging, like we go, here's the spaceship, and he go like, oh, can you just turn it upside down? And then he wanted it to be, that was his idea of the spaceship. So I think having someone who was really open to the possibilities of what you could do, or maybe what you should try to do. I even think about like the early years of Clone Wars, we were developing the pre-visualization tools that actually everybody uses in animation now. And it was a very time-intensive resource, drawing endeavor, but it ultimately shaped the way that Clone Wars series and many CG animation series were made after that.
Could you each talk about, I think that there's this challenge behind working on this stuff at this level. I interviewed Grant Imahara once, and he was telling me about how his time on Phantom Menace was some of the most challenging, but some of the most gratifying, because it was very difficult work, but you were working with just the best people around, no matter what, doing their best work in record time. What's that camaraderie like? What's that team like? What does it feel like to come together to do that sort of stuff at a level where you're putting out stuff like Star Wars?
With Star Wars, it's unique. I mean, certainly the prequels, the Star Wars in the George era were very unique in that it was an independently owned company. I mean, it was just George everything was him. I mean, he owned it. We didn't really have a board to serve. We didn't have anything but George. So that was the sort of, it didn't feel as formal or something. There was something about it where we all felt just like buddies working on a movie together, and we all were serving a direct person that we could see and interact with. So that definitely gave a vibe that kind of, for me, at least because I was very young, it didn't hit my imposter syndrome to take a seat. It didn't, because I felt very welcome. And everyone who came into it felt very welcome, and we were inventing new technologies. Like, there's several technologies in the sound world that George financed with some crazy ideas by a young me and other folks that now are industry standard. And it was not a big deal. It was like, you just explain something to him in common terms, and he would go for it, and he would financially support it. So we were making it up as we went along on a very large project, but it was also an independent film. So there was a small quality about it, and I didn't really feel like I didn't understand the enormity of what we were doing because of that vibe until we made the licensing deal with, I think, Tricom Media, which was like Pizza Hut, KFC and Taco Bell, yeah. And they came to the ranch. They brought this semi-truck and parked it out in the back of our parking lot and had the pizza boxes that all had like Newt Gunray and like all these characters and the 12, you know, the big drinks with the giant plastic like Mace Windu and all the characters working on it. It's like, wow, they really went all out for this. And it's like, yeah, they made a $2 billion deal with the licensing, and then it's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. And so, but, you know, part of that is fun too, because wherever we go, all of us, I mean, it's like we worked on Star Wars. That's such an icebreaker on every level. Like when you meet people, in your job or just your family or friends or anybody, and they find out you've been part of this thing, and it's a big deal. I mean, it's an opener just to talk with somebody and come to these kind of shows.
Funny side note on that Pepsi deal, because Pepsi owned all three of those companies, so it was really a Pepsi deal.
Right.
And when we would shoot on set with George Lucas, they would have Pepsi in the cooler in our craft service because we just got billions of dollars from them. And George Lucas would always request someone go get a Coke from somewhere.
Diet Coke. Yeah, an editorial was always Diet Coke. Where's my Diet Coke?
But anyway, sorry. In the model shop, it always felt like a big dysfunctional family. Some of us actually drove each other a little crazy. There were 125 model makers in our department at its peak during the prequels. So, and a lot of different personalities. Some people specialized. Some people, like myself, were more generalists. And you had to find like. Basically, the leads and the supervisors had to find a way to put people in their strongest area. So it was a lot of effort in, really facilitating people's best work. And that was one of the best parts about it. Like, people were always actively seeing where you're good, where you're gonna fit, and making sure they put you in that place and support you. So it's a very supportive but quirky, weird group of people. It's like the term that would be thrown around a lot is the island of misfit toys in our department.
Definitely, when you go there as an artist, you're around such other great artists that you challenge each other and you bring each other up. You really rise there, I think, and you're challenged to do that. So the camaraderie, especially on the animated. When you're working at Skywalker Ranch, you're 20 miles from anywhere, really. So you have to drive up a mountain road to Skywalker Ranch every morning. It isn't like Hollywood, where Nickelodeon is right down the street from Warner Brothers, which is right down the street from Disney, which is right across the street from DreamWorks. You have like a community. Working at Lucasfilm is really like being, I want to say, like an art commune. And everybody is really encouraged to, even if you are working on sound, if you want to do a painting or something, you could. Yeah. You're really encouraged to be creative in other media than just what you've been hired for.
I'm curious, with all of you being sort of, and obviously none of you were part of that first generation of George's companies. So many of the people that you talked to were like, it was Star Wars initially that got me in. I can't imagine any of you got away with, in your youth, not seeing any of those documentaries about ILM or the sound or anything like that. What influence did any of those sorts of things have on you getting into this career?
1,000,000% influence. I mean, those documentaries, because back then, I mean, seeing even a documentary about a film being made was kind of rare. I mean, there wasn't like, all the behind the scenes stuff. They're constantly going 100, all the time now. So when we got to see those documentaries and how the films were made, it was completely inspiring to me. I mean, on all of us, I'm sure all of us, but yeah, and seeing, and also that was the first time, I mean, I was 5 when the first movie came out, and that was the first time I ever saw even my mother had bought the Marvel comic, the big oversized one, and in the back there was a picture of Obi-Wan, or Alec Guinness sitting in a chair on the Tatooine location, and then next to him I was like, well, who's that? I never saw that guy in the film. Who's that guy with the big beard and the plaid shirt and the coat? I'm like, who is that guy? My mom was like, that's the director. He made the movie. That's George Lucas. I'm like, what's a director? How do they it's not just actors making the movie, or like, so then that's when I got interested in my stuff, and I was very young, but then those documentaries came out, and it was like, oh my gosh, seeing this lived-in universe be created by artisans. And
There's that great video of Ben, out, he's banging on a cable, holding up a telephone pole or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a guy wired to holding up a big telephone pole, and he was hitting this wire and kind of using a contact mic to make the sound to the lasers, and you could immediately see that working and how they did it. And that was life-changing to see those things.
It's been, matter of fact, so life-changing. There's a bird in my neighborhood that makes that sound. Oh, nice. And I've been running out to try to video it. My wife thinks I'm insane.
Get it.
I haven't been able to. It's just, it keeps flying away before I get it.
For me, it was I picked up a book at the library after seeing Star Wars, and it was Star Wars Making of the Movie. I'll never forget that. And it flipped over open to the page where they had model makers. And I had already been building model kits, and I really loved to fabricate things as a child. So when I saw that, I was like, that's a job. I think I want that job. And that was the moment. And then I started following, getting Cinefex, Cinemagic, American Cinematographer, like every book and magazine I could get my hands on. That definitely helped kind of pave my road to ILM. Yeah, so definitely, Star Wars definitely was a huge influence in getting it. But the funny thing was, when you got there, you had to when I got there anyway, we had a secret society of Star Wars fans, because you couldn't really nerd out too much on it, because it would make the guys who made the original movies uncomfortable. Because they didn't come from that perspective. They weren't fans. They actually created this whole world, And so I called it, they used to call us squids if you were fans of visual effects. And we call it squidding out. If you asked too many questions or got too excitable around any of the old timers, they would call you a squid. So we would go to lunch and talk about it, and then go back to work, and of course, complete composure.
I was going to ask about that. Where's that line between being a fan of this stuff and then being able to be a professional and get mentored by these people who had created something that was meaningful to you? Walking into Clone Wars and having George in the meetings and going, this is what we're going to do. It's kind of a dream come true, and it's a little bit surreal to think like, I was 10 when A New Hope came out, and I think it was Raiders the movie that really made me realize, I want to do this job. I want to create something that makes people feel the way I feel right now. So I think that sort of, working with your heroes, meeting your heroes. In George's case, I'm really glad I did, because, it definitely changed my life for the better, but also I think it made me realize the possibilities of what I could be. And I think probably all of us realize besides the dream come true job, we've also enriched the lives of so many others with our contributions.
Ben Burt has an incredible sense of humor, and that's one of the first things that we just locked in on, and that was, working with him. And I was saying that George Lucas also, we're working on movies, have fun with it. That we're not doing things that are life and death. We're actually making entertainment. So that I always felt with Ben, and so it made it easy to, I never really thought. It's like when you're skiing or something down a hill that's really steep and you're having a good time, but you don't think about, I'm going really fast right now. If I just one little misstep, I'm going to crash into a tree. You just know I'm just having fun, So that's kind of what I was like with Ben and George and all that. I didn't really stop to think about the magnitude of the project, because they made it so easy and fun. And Ben Burt, certainly his sense of humor, and I would just jokes the whole time. So good stuff there.
Yeah, you can really immerse yourself in the work you're doing, and that's what kept you out of trouble, I think.
Yes, exactly.
But you also, in general, we would just keep quiet, work, and then kind of read the room and find those opportunities to ask the questions and talk to people that we were really interested in talking to. Just a funny side story with George Lucas, because he was just around. It was his company, but I wasn't used to that. When I very first started there, one day he drove by me in the parking lot and he waved, and I instinctively looked behind me to see who he was waving at. And there was no one there. So I think it took 3 times of him waving at me, because 2 other times I went to the ranch and he was coming down the stairs as I was coming in, and he would wave and say hi, and I'd turn around to see who he was talking to, and there'd be no one there. So the 3rd time I was just like, hi.
I've got another question, but before I ask, I just want to say we have time and a place for audience questions, and we have someone with a mic that'll be up here in the center. Oh, you're over there on that side. So if you want to come over here to line up, where would you like people to line up? Over here on this side, or yeah, line up in the center behind here, and we can take some audience questions. But I just want to ask, as each of you have worked on a whole bunch of different projects with Lucas companies, with ILM, with Skywalker Sound, with Lucas Animation. Is there a particular thing you've worked on that really highlighted what you felt was like the best of your ability, something that you're most proud of for whatever reason, right? I watched in the Light and Magic documentaries, Dennis Muren was like, yeah, this is the thing I did, and I just retired after that, essentially. Like, and it was like, oh, that was a surprising choice for that, at least from the outside, because
What was it?
I thought it was a Perfect Storm.
Huh. Okay.
Where it was just like he was like, well, I just did everything I could with effects on that movie, and I was just done.
Wow. Yeah. For me, it's. I mean, I'm still going strong and happy about all the work we're doing now, but also the Phantom Menace was such a just amazing film to work on in so many levels, just from a technology standpoint, from a team standpoint, from the friends I made, from the mentorship, from all of that. I have such positive memories of working on that film and all the people there and what we created, and yeah, that's the one for me.
Yeah, for me, it was actually Attack of the Clones, the next one.
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones was the first all-digital movie ever created. And the things we were doing on that show in particular were just extremely challenging for the model shop anyway. Camino, I was a lead on Camino miniatures, and usually in Star Wars everything is dirty. So you can kind of get away with a lot. You can move really fast and not worry about too much. But everything in Camino was shiny and clean, and with a lot of windows. And all those windows had to be vacuum formed. And you know, if one speck of dust landed on your vacuum form pattern when you were making these windows, that was a reject. So we would make 4 to 8 windows for every single window that we needed. And then when we were shooting it, we were doing these long hallways. We were shooting with cameras that only have a depth of field. It's hard to say this without getting too technical, but basically you can only focus on either what's near or far away. So we actually had to shoot those hallways in the first 4 feet and then the last section of the hallway separately without moving the miniature. We had to block these things off, and it was very complicated to get all those shots. And then you see them, and they're like 3 seconds. But if one speck of dust landed on that floor in the Camino hallways, that was it. The shot was, you had to reshoot it. So it was a very complicated thing to do. And then
Beautiful. So.
a couple seconds in the movie. It's great.
So you were compositing like 3, 4, 5 sections of that hallway into one shot?
It was usually just 2.
Just 2?
Because when if for example, if I'm shooting a camera into this room, everything on the table in front of me will be out of focus. But if I'm focusing on this big space, I could rack the focus and get all of you in focus because I'm way back here. But on a miniature, you got to fake that. You got to pretend you're far away when you're actually only a couple inches away from something. So that's why we had to shoot the first 4 feet of the hallway with black velvet at the end of the hallway, at that 4 feet. We'd pull the velvet, pull the first part of that hallway, and then shoot the rest of it. And then we comp it together in post.
Wow.
But we couldn't move anything or it wouldn't line up. So it was a really, really challenging thing to do. And no dust. Wow. Yeah. In a stage where we blew things up, it was not an easy task.
Oh boy, for me, probably going up to work at Skywalker Ranch on Clone Wars. Developing that series, writing those early stories of Ahsoka, and not really realizing how important that character would become to a lot of people. And then being brought back to work on Rebels, with Disney, which was really another completely different experience, but also life-changing for me too. But it's, telling the end of Maul,
Yeah.
and seeing Ahsoka reunite with Vader, Anakin. Those stories are really, will be with me forever. So.
Those are all really great moments. First question, please.
Hi. As we all know, ILM started out as a practical effects company, and then at some point when computer effects became a thing, there was this like schism, and some people started going towards that, and some people wanted to stay with practical effects. And I wonder if you guys were there. I mean, that might be a little bit before you guys got there, but like, did you see the effects, like were people quitting, or did they decide to cross-train and go to computer effects? And was it like a painful process? How was that like?
I was there for all of that. I started right after Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 and The Abyss. And I remember Steve Gawley, who was one of the original model makers on New Hope, just looking me straight in the eye and saying I chose the wrong career because I worked in a model shop. But what ended up happening is the model shop actually started adopting technology to become faster, more efficient, and do higher quality work. We use laser cutters, we use CNC machines. We bought a very expensive 3D scanner so we could scan objects and work more closely with the CG department. So we're trying to create kind of a Tron workflow where we can go in and out of the computer as much as we could. So there was a lot of that. We would also help develop the hardware for the digital technology like performance capture. So there was a pretty good back and forth between the CG and the model shop. We created very specific workflows for doing that, and that made it very exciting, and it also kept us in demand even outside of ILM. So it was a really interesting time. But George did actively say every time he started a Star Wars movie that he was not going to do miniatures, which always really broke our hearts because we worked in the model shop. But Rick McCallum, the producer, really recognized the quality level and the cost of miniatures was still really relevant. So we actually did more miniatures for each of the prequels than all three of the original movies combined. But there was a point where he finally did, he sold off the practical division, and his whole motive that entire time was to get the computer graphics department less reliant on practical. We did have some people in practical that weren't really embracing the computer technology, but they kind of worked in their own little bubble, so it didn't really, they would get disgruntled about it, but they weren't like quitting or anything that dramatic. It was just like there was a little push and pull from people who had been in the industry for a long time. But I think me in particular, because in the group I came in with, we were young enough to be raised with computer technology, so we weren't as afraid of it, I guess. But it was a really interesting time. And it also took, I think, 20 years between him saying he wanted to eliminate practical and when it actually happened. Maybe 15 years.
Can I say, is that sort of like a misunderstanding too, where some of it was marketing, where when Phantom Menace came out, it was like, look at all the CG, but like you said, there's more model effects and practical effects than all the classic trilogy combined. And then with Force Awakens, it was like, look at how it's all practical, but there was more CG effects shots in that than many of the prequels.
Yeah. Well, there was there's something that happens actually to this day. It's really interesting because I'll have people say, so what is it like to have been replaced by computers? And I'm running a practical movie studio, so or practically focused. We still use a lot of technology, but we're doing miniatures, we're doing creatures, animatronics, robots, all these things. And I've never stopped working. So I think what happens is, as innovations happen, that becomes the marketing tool for each movie. So they're like, and you see this a lot, when they make a movie, they create a new technology for that movie, they're gonna push that. And so all the other departments, including wardrobe and sets and even editing or whatever, just anything that has not been innovated, they're not gonna talk about, but it's still happening. we've been blowing up models, thankfully, for the many decades that I've been doing this.
So
That is the most fun you'll have, by the way.
So there's less of a war between physical and digital than marketing would have people believe.
Yeah, well, I think, there's not as much of a war. I mean, I think we've kind of established the baseline in practical, and then CG has grown very large around us, right? So there's still definitely more CG shots in a movie than there are practical, but there's always been a place for us.
Yeah.
Just like there's always been a place for wardrobe and actors,
Thank you. For now. Next question.
Thanks for being here. To kind of piggyback off of that, I'm curious if there's anything throughout your career where you wanted to do something, you tried to do something, but there was technical limitations, monetary limitations that weren't realized at the time, but then later on maybe came into effect as things have changed throughout your careers.
It's funny because we always are working on this sort of cutting edge technology. Like for example, when we re-released Revenge of the Sith, I worked on that. Revenge of the Sith. We wanted to make a new mix for it, and we wanted, because the theaters are changing, and a lot of the theaters have Atmos technology, which makes it so you can have sounds coming from above you, and the dynamic range of the theater is much more full, so we can extend the low frequencies, and the subharmonics can feel good. And I'm getting a little technical here, but we want to retain the shape of the mix and what was done originally, but we want to expand it to the stage that you're capable of hearing now. So that's something we continually do. I don't know how long we'll continue to do that with all 9 films. We try to keep them sort of, so whatever playback format you're watching them in, they're going to be feeling right in that playback format. That's something we continue to do that we didn't have the ability to do before because the technology didn't exist. So luckily Disney's involved in helping us continue to make the films be presentable in whatever format the public is using now.
Yeah, for us, I always say we suffer from early adopter syndrome, meaning we do always look ahead at the technology that's being created, and we always want to have the best tools as soon as they come out so we can have that edge and just do the best work we can. So as an example, I bought a 3D printer when it was $40,000, and it broke so often we had to get multiple 3D printers so that one would work at any given time. But that is definitely a part of what we do. We're always looking ahead and spending a lot of money on it. Well, there is a benefit to this, by the way, also, because when you buy technology when it's brand new and expensive, you're one of the very few customers that do that, and then you develop a really great relationship with the companies developing that technology. And if you're like us, we're going to break that technology by pushing the envelope, and they want to know how and why, and then they end up supporting you because they're learning while you're learning how to use their equipment. You're showing them how you can break it and how they can fix it and make it better for everyone else. And so everyone benefits from that because then it becomes cheaper later for everyone else. But it is a syndrome.
Did you have any?
Yeah, just one thing. I pitched a story early on in Clone Wars where a planet full of people are kidnapped and taken away and sold, as slaves. And the producer's like, oh, I'm not even going to show this story to George because he might want to do it. So the answer I got back was, oh yeah, George didn't really like that story. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so 3 years later, I went ahead and did it as a comic book after I'd left the series. And George saw the comics like, hey, this is a great story. Why didn't we ever do this? Dave, call Henry. And then so I get this call saying, so George finally read your comic and he wants to do it. So that's the Zygerian arc that's in season 4 of Clone Wars. So by then, the infrastructure of the series pipeline had been created that we could actually do it. We could pull it off. Because it visited 3 different planets, and it was like a huge drain on production, but George was excited about the story, and if he gets excited about a story, you can't stop him from doing it.
So that was something I don't think people realize about Clone Wars, is that George was sort of building the infrastructure, and so visiting more than one location on season 1 was a huge pain. which is why it got better looking as it went on, because all of a sudden you had all of these assets that could be used, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we had a budget for one new character per episode and one location with 4 areas, so like 4 rooms. So we were really limited with what we could do. You know, people don't realize when they watch the Clone Wars animated movie, the first 20 minutes is actually episode 21. There's a reason why the clones don't take their helmets off in the second half of that movie, because their heads were not built yet.
Yeah. There was, yeah. Thank you. Next question.
With ILM's reach so ubiquitous, is there a project, either whether you worked on it directly or not, that you feel is easily overlooked that people might not realize that ILM even maybe just had a small hand in, or on the flip side, something that maybe because of the cross-pollination of the people working at ILM, it wasn't technically an ILM project that people assumed it is?
That's cool. Wow. Okay, so it's a bit of a loaded question, because in the just the brief 10 years that I was there, out of the 50 years that ILM existed, we did 75% of the visual effects work in the entire industry around the world. So we were working on all of the big franchises. I guess, actually, I'm thinking about it. The one thing I think a lot of people didn't realize is ILM had a commercials division for a long time and was doing commercials. And there was, I don't know if you guys had ever seen the First Union Bank commercials, but when we did a Super Bowl commercial for First Union Bank, we spent as much on that commercial as we would on the visual effects for an entire feature film at that time. I think it was equal to that of the effects of Deep Impact, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so that's kind of a little known portion. Oh, you guys remember the Nissan Pigeons?
Oh yeah.
That was an ILM commercial. There were a bunch of them. Yeah.
It's always weird getting the tour through ILM and going like, wait a second, that's the ending matte painting from Die Hard 2, or like just weird things that you'll see and not expect, or like there's Vigo the Carpathian. It's interesting. If ever anybody gets a chance to tour ILM, I would say take it.
Oh yeah, the Godzilla versus Barclay commercial, and they have Godzilla's head. You just remind me in the hallway at the Presidio.
This is kind of following an earlier question, but like, how often are you like ahead of things when you do stuff like a sound mix? Because I'm like 5.1, 6.1, like, do you guys it already set up kind of for that Atmos 360 setup, and then you just press render and maybe lower the frequencies?
Nothing's really rendered. The only thing we use that does any kind of rendering would be if we're trying to hit a spec of a service like Netflix or Disney Plus, or where they have a very specific dialogue normalization number that we'll get close artistically, and then we'll have the algorithm fix it for us. But generally, we work in a 7:1 environment, so we're always working in a surround with some overhead work in there. And on any film now, we do it, even if it's a dialogue movie, we'll do that. But yeah, that's what the technology can accept now, and the object-based mixing, which is what Atmos is, and that's just, it allows you, we can mix in this format, and if a theater had 60 speakers or 40 speakers or 20, whatever, it'll scale to whatever that is, and that's actually a great technology for us to work with. And you can have it in your home now too, so home Atmos is also quite good. Yeah, thanks, good question for sound nerd.
What's your home theater like? Or what's your home sound system like?
I have.
Is it just you've just got a TV with nothing?
You mentioned. I have. I bought a tiny home, so it's like a RV type thing, and I do all my sound recording, all my voice work in there, and I also have like a 4K projector with 13.2 speakers in there. So it's a little room I can do all my work in.
Imagine you getting really annoyed just like going to somebody else's house to watch a movie.
No, I mean, we master these movies so they can play on an iPhone and in a 13.2 theater.
Just like Martin Scorsese intended.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you get roped into tuning your friend's sound system?
I've done some of that.
I want to do that. I want him to be my AV guy.
But the one thing to turn off, I mean, if everyone here, if we can get it, you should turn off the sort of frame blending that television do. All that, it's like, God, what's it called? Motion smoothing. Yes, motion smoothing.
Can you show me how to do that?
Yes, I can. It's usually like a sub-menu, but you can find it. But that's why, like, I'll walk into some, the hotel, and they're playing something like Lord of the Rings, and it looks like it was shot on a handy cam. You're like, I don't get it. So yeah, turn that off.
Thank you. Next question.
Hey, so you guys talk about always like trying to do the impossible, push boundaries, trying to tech. Is there ever a time when something just wasn't working, and you finally got it, like figured it out before final production?
I feel like that's everything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'll describe a typical meeting at ILM. We have these speaker things that they put on the conference tables, and you can push the button and answer the phone. We'd have a conference call with either the director or the producer, visual effects writer, whoever's making the decisions on creative, and they'll describe the scene that we're getting ready to do. And those meetings always ended exactly the same way. Someone would push hang up on that thing, and then they'd hit it 2 more times to make sure it was hung up. And then we'd look at each other and go, all right, how are we going to do this? No, it was a constant push to do something that had never been done before. Directors love to do something no one's ever seen. So every single project, it felt like, was this new challenge. And it always felt like it went up to the very last second.
Yep.
Like the day before you're on stage, you're doing the final tests, and you don't ever have enough time to test everything as thoroughly as you want, and then somehow it always works out. I think it's just the teams that you have and this blind confidence that we all have in the work that we're doing.
It's kind of our job, is we're creative problem solvers. It's like, how do we do that? And it's the same thing from story. Oh, the character's got to do this, but how do I maneuver their motivation together with the plot to get them to do this? And then Matt's going to put some great sound on it to save us.
I think the time limitations is what basically has you stop, so you can constantly refine something over and over and over again. Like, and when we did the sequel movies, J.J. Abrams had created some amazing visual new things we were going to deal with, and BB-8 was our first one where it's like, it can't sound like R2, it has to be, something new. And of course, Ben Burtt, who created R2 already, had sort of broken the mold on like, everything that droid does was so incredible. So and the idea that you have to make something that's an instant classic is very hard, to make a signature sound, because like everything that had come before, it had sat with audiences for years and years and years. I mean, and Ben Burtt told me a story where when he first put R2-D2 into the track on episode 4, Marsha Lucas, the editor, when they had nothing in there for a long time, and he finally put it in, was like, what is that? It sounds like it's a chicken. What is this? And really, they were like, what is this? What is it? And George, luckily, was like, let's just sit with it for a while. Let's have it stay in the track for a while, and then people got an answer for it. But BB-8, I think I made, with the sound designers, at least 40 or 50 iterations of what that was going to sound like before we got something that was very simple and... Yeah, so, that was a long, and all those droids iterations are now in my library, so I can just, if anyone wants a droid for their Star Wars now, I'm like, here you go, it's done already. It's BB-8 iteration number 27.
Have you guys what's the closest you've cut it? Like, has it ever been as close as, like, there's infamously the stories of Empire Strikes Back, where it goes out to theaters, and George Lucas starts calling ILM that night saying, I've got some new shots we need to add.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think people forget, like, there are no such things as the original theatrical editions, because George was tinkering literally after release, like in 1980. And they added, like a dozen shots to the ending of Empire Strikes Back 3 weeks after release.
I mean, we messed around with Reel 3 of Episode 4 in 2013. So that was, I mean, we've done, if he has the opportunity to do refinement, he does. I mean, and also even now with movies, like I just did Fantastic Four, And that we have a theatrical version of what it is, and then there's visual effects that are updated in the IMAX version, then there's visual effects that are updated in the home, that will be updated in the home video version. So we just keep going, to get the perfect thing in there before it settles. And even now with everything on streaming, there was I remember on Clone Wars once we went back into an episode and fixed something and just re-put it back out on Cartoon Network or whatever it was, and you can just do that.
Yeah, I think for Rebels we had a scene where we're going to get James Earl Jones to kind of do for the premiere, so it was a last minute thing. I remember when I did the comic book adaptation for Attack of the Clones, I'd finished it, and then I got a call from the editor saying, oh, by the way, George added this sequence at the end where there's this giant robot factory chase in battle, and I'm like, what? You have 1 page to put it all in.
Yeah.
And then there was, in that same scene, I think Sam Witwer had voiced Palpatine in that scene, and then you got Ian to do it too, yeah. So it's always changing. Thank you. Next question.
Over the course of all your careers, is there a particular technological development that stands out as having had the biggest impact on your job, and that can be positive or negative?
Going from tape-based linear editing to non-linear computer-based editing was enormous, and George Lucas funded a project called SoundDroid and another one called EditDroid, and those technologies got absorbed into Avid, but that completely changed the landscape. And the first project we did it on was Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. It was a TV show we did for Paramount and ABC, and that was sort of our testing ground for getting ready to do the prequels, and that was my first television thing I'd ever done. And that was a huge sea change, and it was wonderful to be able to take experts from the field of tape-based work, and I got the opportunity to teach them something, a new craft, to use computers and bring their skill set forward into the new editing paradigm. And that was for me, I felt useful that I could teach somebody something and they could also teach me the skills of editing and design, and it was a great symbiotic relationship, but that was a big one.
In practical, it's the 3D printer. When they first came out, we kind of scoffed at it because it was a tool, right? It was just another tool in the arsenal of things that we knew how to do, and knowing how to do traditional art was still very important. It still is. But now we have multiple 3D printers for different tasks. We can print in full color, high resolution, in flexible, translucent, and rigid materials. We have high resolution printers. Oh, I just said that. Sorry, I'm thinking of this wall of printers that I have at my studio. One of them we just do flexible color prints. One, we have a pair that we do rigid, translucent, and opaque prints that are high resolution. No sanding, no paint. Wow. It's really amazing. Wow. We might tweak the paint a little bit, but and then we really show them off in the Stan Lee documentary that's on Disney Plus. We won an Emmy for that.
Nice.
And then we have ones that can do carbon fiber and really structural components. So we have a lot of different 3D printers, and that's really been a game changer in recent years. But it didn't affect things for a long time. But that's definitely impractical. It's everything now. Those machines are running all the time.
I just have words to make their lives hard. It's the same words. I guess final draft is hey, make a sound I've never heard before and make it great.
Yeah, exactly.
Who loves the seismic charge noise from? Isn't that amazing? That guy, right? Okay.
That's absence of sound that made it interesting, because we actually removed a component that made it like catch your breath, and and then we hit that mark a few times in episode 8 when Holdo sacrifices herself against the Imperials, the First Order. That's not. But that absence of sound definitely makes you, the timing of everything kind of gets you in that mode. But yeah, glad you like that.
Thank you. Last question from the audience. Yeah.
You mentioned, the pressure of creating an instant classic.
Yeah.
But was there ever the pressure for any of you something updating and original that made you go, oh God, I can't believe I'm making any adjustments to this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the episode 4, that movie, when it was made, was not, they didn't know it was going to be a gigantic hit. So the way it was archived from a sound perspective was very shoddily. It was like, there wasn't a lot of separation of elements, and so when we wanted to make the Blu-ray version or even the DVD version, we couldn't expand the sound field because everyone has a vision of what they heard when they saw those films originally. Like the Star Destroyer came from overhead, and then the big, but most people saw it in mono, so they're only like thinking about it that way. So we had to think about what people's ideas were of what they probably thought they heard and make it be heard. And so I had to reconstitute the entire episode 4 mix from scratch, from every single individual element, every footstep, piece of dialogue, music take, and it took a year of going through that movie and listening to it and comparing it to the original and listening and putting all the pieces together and then playing that for Ben Burtt and George Lucas. And then once I had it up on blocks that they could play with, they were like, maybe we should start doing it. No, so we tried, what's in there, and currently on the one on Disney Plus is the approved Ben Burtt, George Lucas, Matthew Wood, Skywalker Sound mix. It harkens back to the original version. But that one was, there's no other film where I could have watched it in 30-second increments and known in my soul that if something was wrong, like a laser was off or something, because I saw it so many times as a child, it was ingrained in my DNA. So that was a fun gig, but I spent a year on that. Yeah, while playing Star Wars Galaxies at night with my friends. So I was a little bit doing a Star Wars overdose, but I still love it.
For me, it was Jedi Rocks.
Oh yeah.
Because we had worked on the special editions, which for me, because I grew up on the original movies, it was kind of this weird time travel mind warp, fun situation to be able to work on the very same movies that inspired me to work in the movies. But Jedi Rocks felt wrong. Because I also grew up on the same Return of the Jedi that everyone else saw. Most of the scenes that we did for the special editions didn't have that vibe because we were just adding scenes or adding elements to scenes. But that was replacing an entire sequence of the movie. Yeah. And that one always felt a little odd because I liked the old one, but I like the new one too. So.
Did you put on a stormtrooper outfit or anything for those?
Oh, we got to dress up a lot. Yeah, I was in the pod races. Nice. In the background. I'm in the Senate as a page. I think I'm like at least 2 pixels. In the Coruscant celebration in Return of the Jedi, all of us that got to do that one were in it 3 times, because as they pan across Coruscant and show that crowd, they didn't have enough of us to fill the whole scene. So we stood here and did it, and then we stood here and we did it again and stood here.
I put a sound in there when they go across Naboo. I have a Gungan who's jumping on top of one of the buildings, and he goes, "We are free now!" That's in the special edition. You can hear it.
There's so many debates about whether or not that's Jar Jar.
It's not. It's me.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I have a funny story, a short one. When we first started the Clone Wars, we had to do these animatic screenings for George, and to do the voices, it was just people around the crew. So when we started off, I was doing Obi-Wan and Dave was doing Anakin. And so we basically had to record the dialogue, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, we're doing these like lines that are for these characters that he created, and we're not really actors. So he watched the first sequence and he turned and looked at us and said, "You guys are terrible." And we nodded. That's okay. Okay, we got it. But he accepted it, and that was the start of the Clone Wars.
So great. I want to find those original tracks.
Oh, please don't. Anakin, get to the ship, Anakin.
Yes.
If they ever release them on physical media again, that'd be a great bonus feature.
Physical media would be nice.
Yeah, so that's all the time we have. Thank you all so much, and thank you all for sharing your stories with us. Yeah, a lot of great stories in there. So coming up, Holly and I will be live at FanX in Salt Lake City just in a couple weeks. And you can catch us live there, and we'd love to see you. So, make sure you're there. For me, you can find me at swankmatron.com. I'll be doing some panels there with Michael A. Stackpole about BattleTech and Star Wars, and there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff there. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, go check that out. Swankmatron.com is my website, and you can always find me there. A lot of cool stuff coming up soon, and always looking for cool stuff to do. So for Full of Sith, you can go back and listen to the entire back catalog of episodes at fullofsith.com. You can send us email at holocron@fullofsith.com. We always love hearing from you. And for our gratification, you can be sure to rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it, and be sure to tell your friends about it. And, do that or not. I'm not the boss of you. So, without further ado, for super producer Mike Pilot and for Holly Fry, I'm Bryan Young, and the Force will be with you, always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.